Thomas and Friends as a franchise has been going on for a very long time. The TV series since 1984, the Railway series since 1945. And with any long-running franchise, this question always pops up. Is it dead? Now, this isn't going to be a very structured video. It's going to be structured in the sense of I will present points for and points against, but they're all my own thoughts on the matter. I haven't went into full detail with a big script or anything. It's just what's coming from my heart about this franchise. Before I start, these are all my own personal opinions. Let me know in the comments how you feel about the Thomas and Friends franchise. All I ask is that you be respectful and above all, enjoy the video. Okay, let's dive in. So I'm going to start with the points for. First one being, it's still producing content. Whether we like All Engines Go or not is a matter of opinion, but the bottom line is that Thomas and Friends, in one form or another, is still active at the time of this recording. There are still new episodes of All Engines Go being produced, again, at the time of this recording, and even though some fans don't like the merchandise that's being produced for Thomas and Friends, it is still being actively produced at the time of this recording. There are still toys on the shelves, there are still kids buying them, there are still kids wanting the DVDs, and new episodes being shown on TV and streaming sites. So how can a franchise be dead if it's still actively producing new content? And even if it wasn't, another reason why it's not a dead franchise is the fandom itself. The fandom itself for Thomas is alive and kicking. In some ways, a lot of people say that the fandom are the sole reason that Thomas and Friends still lives on in the hearts of many people around the world. You have channels like myself that create video pieces and discussions about Thomas and Friends. You have other creators that create series around Thomas and Friends. And let's not forget the documentary that recently came out about an unlikely fandom, or the fan-made episode The Good Old Days, which was produced to a season 5 quality perspective. These are prime examples of why this franchise is still alive and kicking, because it'll always be alive in the hearts of those that grew up with Thomas and Friends, have a love, a passion, and a dedication for the franchise. You can't kill something that lives on through the millions of people that it has affected. There are other franchises out there, like Transformers, for example, that are actively producing new content, such as TV series and movies. But they also have a dedicated fan base that actively discuss the Transformers and the older cartoons from the 1980s. If a fandom feel that strongly about a franchise, it's never going to go away. There will be content produced in any way, shape, or form. Another reason why it's still alive is through streaming sites and physical media. While physical media may be going the way of the dinosaur for a lot of people, older fans like myself have a massive collection of the original Thomas and Friends DVDs, with all the ones that were available to us at the time. So we will always have that back catalogue to look back on fondly and still keep it alive in our hearts, no matter if they've been taken down from YouTube or not. And for younger generations, streaming sites still show Thomas and Friends. Granted, it's the Big World, Big Adventures era and All Engines Go, but they're still actively showing them on sites like Netflix and Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime, as far as I know, have the classic era on its site as well. I don't know that personally because I don't have Amazon Prime, but it's what I've been told from other members of the fandom that do have Amazon Prime in the UK. And there will always be a demand to watch Thomas and Friends in any type of media capacity, streaming, physical media, or even reruns on TV. In the UK, Channel 5's Milkshake still play not only All Engines Go, but the Brenner era from time to time, as well as Big World, Big Adventures era, because there's still a demand for it. Granted, it's on at like 6 or 7 AM, but it's still being shown. And as long as channels are still willing to show it, it will never go away. Okay, so I've covered the positives, and now I'm going to cover the negatives of why Thomas and Friends might be a dead franchise. The first one being, the glory days are well and truly over. This is one that's hard for me to admit, because it's admitting that I am the old guard of the Thomas and Friends fandom. I don't personally have a problem with that, but it does really make you realise that the glory days of Thomas are well and truly in the rearview mirror in terms of classic era. It's called classic for a reason. Everything moves on. Time is an unforgiving mistress. And even if we look at the Brenner era, all the good work that was done was instantly squandered by Big World, Big Adventures, and now All Engines Go. So as quickly as we had a renaissance, it was taken away from us and squandered. And a lot of the fandom think we would rather have no content than the subpar content of Thomas and Friends that we have now, but we don't know what will happen. And that leads me into my next point. Thomas and Friends has a very uncertain future. At the time of this recording, there were talks of Mattel potentially being bought out, and it also means that Thomas and Friends could become a redundant IP. Even if it stays with Mattel, they only seem to have these IPs because it looks good on their portfolio. There doesn't seem to be an active campaign to make decent quality Thomas content anymore. They put out the bare minimum that's cost effective and produce toys that doesn't seem to be any care or quality anymore. I don't say that in terms of the people creating the episodes and creating the toys themselves. I think they have a passion for it, otherwise they wouldn't do the job. It's the higher ups and corporate that just don't seem to give a damn. They don't want to produce a quality product that's applicable for all ages, like they used to do with the classic era and for a short time the Brenner era. People thought that maybe the success of the Barbie movie might bring a little bit more eyeballs onto it, but it just seems that they have an IP for IP's sake. I touched on it briefly there, but I'll go into it a little bit more detail now. Thomas and Friends is not for general audiences anymore. When Thomas and Friends was first made and the Railway series books were first produced, the core demographic was for children, but it wasn't the sole intention. It was for everybody, because if the kids like it, they know that the parents are going to have to either read the books or watch the episodes constantly. I mean, my parents did, because I love Thomas and Friends. Thomas had a uniqueness, a charm, an elegance that I love and still love to this day. It doesn't appeal to modern audiences. It's seen as more slow, meandering. That's just the way that media and time have moved on. I personally still like the slow, comforting pace because sometimes we need that. But the point is, I can't watch the Nitrogen era over and over again like I do with the classic era. I can't watch the Blubber era over and over again. And I definitely will not watch All Engines Go over and over again because it's not for a general audience. It's become part of that generic, corporate, bland, soulless IPs that exist in all properties now, which means if the audience numbers dips and kids aren't interested, it's more likely to be put on the chopping block. So do I think Thomas and Friends is a dead franchise? My nostalgia goggles say no. The very bare minimum of facts that they're still currently producing new content also say no, but it doesn't look very promising for the future. If Mattel lose interest in it, they just won't produce more episodes. If someone buys the IPs from Mattel, they might not even pick them up. They might just buy them because it looks good in their portfolio and then live off the back catalogue. So while I don't think that Thomas and Friends is dead just yet, there's not very positive signs. But what do you think? Do you think Thomas died long ago? Do you think there's still life in the old dog yet? Let me know in those comments below. And until next time, keep on jugging.